The crystal chandeliers of Seattle's Grand Ballroom trembled with Henry Wallace's cruel laughter. "Look at this pathetic creature." The billionaire's voice dripped venom as 500 donors turned to stare. "A crippled boy with a broken violin thinks he deserves our charity." 10-year-old Sam Parker clutched his taped-together instrument, his deformed left hand trembling. The room fell silent, suffocating in its judgment. "Tell you what, boy," Henry sneered, spreading his arms theatrically. "Play something, anything that moves me. Make me feel even a flicker of emotion, and I'll adopt you right here. Tonight. Give you everything my fortune can buy." Sam lifted his pale eyes. "You lost a son, didn't you, Mr. Wallace? I can hear it in your voice." The billionaire froze. Sam raised the damaged violin to his chin. The first note rang out hauntingly pure, impossibly familiar. Henry's champagne glass shattered against marble. That melody. Only one person had ever played it. Before we continue, please leave a like and let me know which city you're watching from. Now, let's get back to the story. Henry Wallace commanded attention wherever he stood, and tonight was no exception. At 58, the software mogul possessed the kind of wealth that turned heads and opened doors. $2.3 billion built from code and ruthless ambition. But those who knew him before Margaret's death would hardly recognize the man sneering at the frightened child. Cancer had taken his wife 8 years ago, leaving him hollow. Then came that Christmas Eve 7 years past, when flames devoured his Bellevue mansion and stole 12-year-old Daniel from him forever. The investigators said the boy died from smoke inhalation. Henry wasn't home another late night at the office, another missed bedtime story. After that, the loving father became Seattle's cruelest philanthropist, attending charity galas solely to humiliate those he called parasites feeding on others' success. His 47-room mansion stood like a mausoleum. Daniel's bedroom preserved exactly as it was, that final morning, soccer trophies gleaming, bed still unmade, violin resting in its case. Sam Parker knew nothing of mansions or fathers who mourned. Found on St. Catherine's church steps at age 3, clutching only a water-stained note reading, "Please love him." He'd bounced through 11 foster homes like a pinball nobody wanted to catch. The Brennans broke his left hand when he was 5, said he'd stolen food, though he'd only been hungry. The hospital asked questions, but foster kids rarely got justice, just new placements. The injury healed wrong, leaving his fingers curved at unnatural angles. He'd found the violin in a dumpster behind the concert hall when he was 7. The bridge was cracked, strings rusty, varnish peeling like dead skin. But when Sam drew his bow across those damaged strings, something magical happened. Music flowed despite his disability, perhaps because of it. Then old Joe appeared, Joseph Whitman, though Sam knew him only as Joe had materialized one evening while Sam practiced behind the orphanage. 82 years old, clothes smelling of street corners and forgotten dreams, hands that shook except when holding a violin. He'd been Seattle Symphony's first chair once. Before madness or sorrow, Sam never knew which stole his life away. For 3 years, Joe taught Sam everything proper bow hold adapted for his twisted fingers, breathing techniques, and strange melodies the old man hummed but couldn't name. "Music remembers what we forget," Joe would say, tears streaming down weathered cheeks. "Play for the ghosts, boy. They're the only ones really listening." Sam's small fingers found their position on the violin's neck with practiced precision, compensating for the deformity with a technique no classical instructor would recognize. He'd developed it alone, through necessity and pain, turning disability into a unique style. The bow touched the strings, and the first scales emerged simple, clean notes that shouldn't have been possible from such damaged instruments, both violin and boy. "Is this it?" Henry's voice cut through the tentative melody. Scales any first-year student can manage scales. Several donors chuckled nervously, grateful the attention wasn't on them. "Come now, boy. You're wasting everyone's time." "Security. Perhaps we should—" But Sam wasn't listening anymore. His eyes had closed, and the scales began transforming, building in complexity like a storm gathering strength. The melody wove through classical progressions, added unexpected jazz inflections, then settled into something entirely different. The laughter died. Conversation stopped. Even the waiters froze mid-pour as the music filled the ballroom with impossible beauty. Henry's sneer began to falter. There was something about the phrasing, the way the boy's twisted hand created vibrato, the specific emotional weight behind each note. It pulled at something deep in his chest, a locked door he'd welded shut 7 years ago. Then Sam shifted into a new melody, and Henry's champagne glass slipped from suddenly nerveless fingers, crystal exploding against Italian marble. Moon River Variation. The words escaped Henry's lips as a whisper. His legs wouldn't hold him. He gripped the nearest table, knuckles white, as his private lullaby, the one he'd composed for infant Daniel, hummed during midnight feedings, played on his study's piano when the boy had nightmares flooded the ballroom. This melody had never been recorded, never been performed publicly, never existed outside the walls of his home and his broken heart. Mrs. Catherine Hayes, the evening's organizer, stepped forward. "Henry, are you all right? You've gone pale as—" "How?" The word came out strangled. Henry pushed past her, stumbling toward the stage where Sam continued playing, adding flourishes and variations that made Henry's chest tighten. Those weren't random improvisations. They were Daniel's additions, little modifications his son had made during their Sunday morning practice sessions. The trill at measure 16, the unexpected minor shift at measure 32, the way the bow danced during the bridge that Daniel had laughingly called the butterfly part. "Stop." Henry's voice cracked. "Stop playing this instant." Sam's eyes opened slowly, but his bow continued moving. "Old Joe said this belonged to a boy who went to heaven. He said the boy's father wrote it, but heaven kept all the best parts." The music swelled, reaching the crescendo Henry had written the night Daniel was born, when Margaret was sleeping and snow was falling and the world felt perfect and permanent. "Where did you learn this?" Henry was at the stage now, reaching up toward the child with shaking hands. "Who taught you this?" "Old Joe taught me lots of songs," Sam replied, never stopping. "He lived behind St. Catherine's orphanage, under the bridge where the echo makes everything sound like a cathedral. He said music was all he had left of." The boy paused, forehead creasing. He couldn't remember what he'd lost, just that it was everything. Henry turned to his security chief, Malcolm Torres, who was already on his phone. "Find this Joe. Now. Tonight. I don't care what it costs." "Sir, should I find him?" The 500 donors watched in stunned silence as Seattle's coldest billionaire came undone before their eyes. Some recorded on their phones, already imagining the viral headlines. Others, those who'd known Henry before tragedy transformed him, recognized something breaking open in his face. Sam reached the lullaby's final movement, the part Henry had never finished. After the fire, he couldn't bear to complete it. But Sam impossibly played an ending. Not just any ending, but the exact conclusion Henry had heard in his head, but never written down. The resolution Daniel had suggested one afternoon, sitting at the piano, his 12-year-old fingers dancing across keys. "Dad, what if it ended like this, like the sun coming up?" The last note hung in the air like a question. Sam lowered the violin, and his young voice carried across the silent ballroom. "Old Joe died 2 weeks ago, Mr. Wallace, but he left something for you. He said you'd come eventually. He said the music would bring you." The boy reached into his threadbare jacket and withdrew an envelope, yellowed and worn. "He said to tell you he was sorry. For everything." Henry's hands trembled so violently he couldn't grasp the envelope. It fluttered to the stage like a dying moth while his security chief, Malcolm Torres, pushed through the crowd. Phone extended. "Mr. Wallace, we found footage. The orphanage security cameras, there's months of recordings with this Joe character." Malcolm's face was ashen. "Sir, you need to see this." The phone screen showed grainy footage an elderly man sitting cross-legged beneath the riverside bridge, teaching Sam violin. Henry squinted at the shaking image, his breath catching, the way the old man tilted his head when listening. The peculiar habit of tapping his right foot in 3/4 time even during 4/4 pieces, the way his shoulders rolled before a particularly difficult passage. "My God," Henry whispered. The face was wrong-aged beyond recognition, hair white and wild, skin marked by decades of exposure, but those mannerisms belonged to only one person. That's him. Sam had resumed playing, perhaps from nervousness or habit. His bow danced across the strings, producing a complicated pizzicato passage that made Henry's knees buckle. Daniel had invented that technique during a rainy afternoon, calling it raindrops on the roof. They'd spent hours perfecting it together, Henry on piano, Daniel on violin, Margaret laughing from the doorway about her two musicians. "Where is this Joe?" Henry's voice was barely human. "Where is he?" Sam's innocent eyes met his. "I told you, sir. He died 2 weeks ago, November 13th. The sisters at St. Catherine's helped bury him in the Potter's Field. Plot 847. The boy's voice grew softer. He was very sick at the end. His mind would come and go like the tide. But that last day, he was clear. He made me promise to come here tonight, to play for you. He knew I'd be here. He said you never missed the November charity gala. Said you'd been coming for 7 years, punishing yourself." Sam set down his violin carefully. "He said you were his—" The boy's forehead wrinkled. "His something." He couldn't remember the word, but he cried when he said it. Mrs. Catherine Hayes, her elderly hand steady where Henry's shook, picked up the envelope from the stage. "Henry, would you like me to read it?" The words came out as a command and plea combined. "Please." Catherine's fingers worked the yellowed paper free. The handwriting was shaky, alternating between lucid precision and confused rambling. She cleared her throat, and 500 of Seattle's elite leaned forward as one. "My dearest Henry," she began, her voice carrying across the silent ballroom. "If you are reading this, then the boy has played for you, and you have heard what I could never say. I am Joseph Samuel Whitman. I am your father." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Henry's estranged father, the legendary violinist who disappeared 20 years ago after their bitter fight about Margaret. The man Henry had banished from his life for calling his wife beneath their family's station. Catherine continued reading. "My mind is clearer today than it has been in years, so I must write quickly before the fog returns. 7 years ago, on Christmas Eve, I came to your house. I wanted to reconcile, to meet my grandson properly, to apologize for the prideful fool I'd been, but I arrived to find flames." The ballroom could have been a tomb for all the sound it held. Sam had picked up his violin again, holding it like a talisman. The fire department hadn't arrived yet. I could hear someone inside a child's voice, crying. I knew it was Daniel. I broke through the back garden doors. The smoke was thick, black, choking. I found him in the music room, unconscious beneath the piano where he'd tried to shelter. I carried him out through the garden. But Henry, Catherine's voice wavered. "Oh, Henry." His head struck the doorframe as I pulled him free. When he woke hours later in my car, he didn't remember anything. Not his name, not you, nothing before that moment. Henry fell to his knees on the marble floor. Several people moved to help him, but he waved them away with savage desperation. I panicked. Catherine continued reading. I was old, confused, frightened. The boy didn't know me, didn't know himself. I thought, God forgive me, I thought this was my chance, to raise him as I should have raised you, without the ambition, without the pressure, without the mistakes. So I took him. I became Old Joe, and he became Sam. We lived in my car at first, then shelters, then the streets. My money was gone. I'd given it all away years before in penance for my sins against you and Margaret. Tears streamed down Catherine's face as she read, but her voice remained steady. The dementia came gradually. By the time Sam was 7, I couldn't always remember who he was, only that I loved him and music connected us. He found a broken violin, and I taught him everything I knew, including, it seems, the melodies you had created for Daniel. They lived somewhere deep in his memory, emerging through his fingers like ghosts. The crowd was openly weeping now. Someone had called for medical assistance, but Henry remained on his knees, staring at Sam with eyes that held 7 years of grief. "But here's what you must know," Catherine read, her voice growing stronger. "The boy doesn't remember being Daniel, but he is Daniel. There's a scar on his right shoulder from when he fell from his bike at age 4. You'll find it there. He hums Margaret's made-up songs without knowing where they came from. He plays with the exact technique you taught him, modified only by his injured hand." Sam had started crying too, though he seemed unsure why. The violin hung loose in his grip. "His hand," Catherine continued, "was injured when he was 8. 3 older boys tried to rob me of the few dollars we had for food. Sam, my brave Sam, fought them off with his little fists. They broke his hand in 3 places. We couldn't go to a proper hospital. They would have asked questions, discovered who he really was. So it healed wrong. My final failure as a guardian." Henry looked at Sam's twisted hand with new understanding. Not abuse, heroism. "I'm dying now. My son. The cancer is quick and merciful. More than I deserve. I've left Sam at St. Catherine's because I can no longer care for him. But I've given him this letter and told him about the gala. He doesn't know he's your son. I couldn't burden him with that confusion. But you'll know. Listen to him play. Watch him move. See Margaret's kindness in his eyes and your determination in his jaw. He is Daniel. He is your son. And I stole 7 years from both of you." Catherine paused, looking at Henry with concern. He hadn't moved, hadn't breathed. "Forgive me," she finished. "Not for my sake, but for his. He needs you, Henry. He needs his father. And perhaps you need him too. Your loving and unworthy father, Joseph." The letter ended. The ballroom remained frozen in absolute silence. Then Malcolm Torres spoke, his phone still extended. "Sir, there's more footage. Recent, from 2 weeks ago, the day before he died, on the screen." Joseph lay in a charity hospital bed, his eyes suddenly, brilliantly clear. His voice, though weak, carried the crisp enunciation of Seattle's former first violin. "Sam, my boy, no. Daniel. Your name is Daniel Henry Wallace. Your father is alive. I am your grandfather, and I have done something unforgivable." Henry collapsed completely, his body folding in on itself as 7 years of grief transformed into something else entirely, hope twisted with rage, love tangled with betrayal. Sam Daniel stood on the stage, 10 years old and lost, holding a broken violin and a truth too large for his small frame to carry. Part A. The Search for Truth. Marcus Chen pushed through the ballroom's gilded doors at 9:43 p.m., medical bag in one hand, a thick folder in the other. The psychiatrist had treated Joseph Whitman during his few lucid periods at Seattle General's charity ward. What he carried would either confirm or destroy the impossible story unfolding before 500 of Seattle's most powerful citizens. "Mr. Wallace." Dr. Chen's voice cut through the chaos. "I received Malcolm's call. I've brought Joseph's medical records, everything from the past 7 years. Henry struggled to his feet, his $2.3 billion worthless against the weight of possibility. "Tell me everything. Every detail." Dr. Chen opened the folder on the nearest table, crystal centerpieces pushed aside. "Joseph Whitman was first admitted to our psychiatric unit 4 years ago, presenting with severe dissociative disorder and selective amnesia. His memories were fragmented. He could recall his years with the Seattle Symphony perfectly, could play any piece from memory, but couldn't remember his family name half the time. He spoke constantly of a boy he was caring for, sometimes calling him his student, sometimes his grandson. Once, Chen paused, finding a specific note. His second chance. Did he ever say the boy's real name? Henry's voice was raw. Never consistently. But here's what's significant. Chen produced a brain scan. Trauma-induced amnesia, specifically centered around December 24th, 7 years ago. The hippocampus showed severe stress markers consistent with a traumatic event. Fire, Mr. Wallace? He had recurring nightmares about fire. Malcolm Torres had been working his phone continuously, coordinating with investigators across the city. Sir, I've got the fire department's deputy chief on the line. He was a lieutenant during the Bellevue Mansion fire. The phone's speaker crackled to life. Mr. Wallace, Deputy Chief Richardson here. I've pulled the records you requested. There's an irregularity we never resolved. We found evidence of 2 bodies in the house your housekeeper, Mrs. Martinez, who we recovered, and what we assumed was your son in the music room. But what? Henry's knuckles were white. The remains we found were too damaged for DNA testing with 2017 technology. We identified them as Daniel based on location and circumstance, but the medical examiner noted something odd. The body seemed smaller than expected for a 12-year-old. We assumed it was the intensity of the fire, tissue shrinkage. But you're saying it might not have been my son. I'm saying we never had proof beyond circumstance. And there's more. Our arson investigator found footprints in the garden adult male, size 10. Someone was there besides the victims. We assumed it was a passerby who called 911, but the caller ID was never traced. Dr. Chen interjected. Joseph wore size 10 shoes. I have it in his intake records. The crowd had formed a massive circle around the stage, everyone recording, witnessing, judging. Sam stood frozen in the center, still clutching his violin, tears streaming down his young face. There's security footage, Malcolm announced. Laptop now open. From the coffee shop across from your mansion. Their cameras faced your garden gate. The grainy footage played on the screen. Malcolm turned toward the crowd. December 24th, 2017, 11:47 p.m. A figure emerged from the smoke-filled garden, carrying something someone wrapped in a blanket. The timestamp showed this was 3 minutes before fire trucks arrived. Enhance it, Henry commanded. The tech team Malcolm had patched in worked their magic. The figure became clearer, elderly, stumbling, carrying a child whose arm hung limp. The man's face turned briefly toward the streetlight. Jesus Christ! Someone in the crowd gasped. That's Joseph Whitman. I saw him perform 20 years ago. That's definitely him. Henry stared at the screen, watching his father carry what might be his son away from the burning house. Away from him. Away from everything. Eleanor Richards, Henry's 71-year-old household manager, stepped forward from where she'd been standing in the shadows. She'd worked for the Wallace family for 30 years, the only staff member who hadn't been in the house that night. I have something to say. Eleanor's voice carried the authority of decades of service. I saw Joseph that night. Every head turned. I was returning from my sister's when I saw him put the boy in his car. I thought I was hallucinating from the smoke, but Joseph looked right at me and said, "He's better off dead to him than dead in truth." I was in shock. The fire trucks were arriving. I said nothing. God forgive me. I said nothing. The ballroom erupted. 500 voices rose at once: outrage, sympathy, condemnation, understanding. Sam pressed his hands over his ears, overwhelmed. You knew, Henry's voice was deadly quiet. You knew my son might be alive, and you said nothing. You were drinking yourself to death, Mr. Wallace. Eleanor shot back. 30 years of repressed frustration erupting. Every night, bourbon until you passed out. That's why Daniel was alone when the fire started. That's why he was playing with matches in the music room trying to light the candles on the birthday cake he'd made for his dead mother because you forgot it was her birthday. Part B. The DNA test controversy. The revelation hung in the air like smoke. Henry's sobriety, 7 years hard-won, suddenly made sense to everyone. The guilt hadn't been just about absence. It had been about presence. Impaired and useless. "We need DNA testing," someone shouted from the crowd. "That's the only way to know for sure." Dr. Chen stepped forward with his medical bag. "I can perform a rapid paternity test. Results in 2 hours with the portable lab in my car. We just need blood samples from both." "No!" Sam's scream cut through the chaos. He pressed himself against the stage backdrop, violin clutched like a shield. "No needles, please! No needles!" The terror in his voice was primal. Henry started toward him, but Sam scrambled backward, knocking over a music stand. "What did they do to you?" Henry asked softly. "Foster home number 7. Sam whispered. "The Brennans. They said I was sick, needed medicine, but the needles just made me sleep while they—" He couldn't finish. Didn't need to. The crowd's dynamic shifted. Half demanded the test. It's the only way to know. The boy could be anyone. Henry deserves certainty. The other half recoiled. You can't traumatize him further. This is a child, not evidence. Haven't enough adults failed him? Mrs. Catherine Hayes, the gala's organizer, raised her authoritative voice. There are other ways. Birthmarks, scars, identifying features that wouldn't require traumatizing the child. Dr. Chen nodded. Daniel's medical records from his pediatrician, I can have them here in 30 minutes. While they waited, the divide grew sharper. Richard Blackwood, a pharmaceutical executive, voiced what many were thinking. If this is Daniel Wallace, Henry has rights. Parental rights don't disappear because of trauma. Rights, shouted Patricia Morgan, a child advocacy lawyer. That boy has been Sam for 7 years. You can't just erase that because of DNA. But if he was kidnapped or saved, we just heard Henry was drunk while his house burned. Henry stood in the center of it all, watching Sam, maybe Daniel, shake with fear. The boy's terror of needles was real. The trauma was real. Whatever the truth of his identity, his pain was undeniable. Sir, Malcolm interrupted, showing his phone. Daniel's pediatrician sent the records. There's a detailed body map from his last checkup. Age 12. Dr. Chen studied the documents. Appendectomy scar, right lower abdomen, performed at age 8, distinctive horseshoe shape from the emergency surgery. Also, a birthmark on the left shoulder blade, shaped like a crescent moon. And, he paused, a small circular scar on the right palm from grabbing a hot poker at age 3. All eyes turned to Sam. Sam. Henry's voice was gentle now, all arrogance gone. Would you let Dr. Chen just look? No needles. No touching if you don't want. Just look. Sam clutched his violin tighter. If I'm not him, if I'm not Daniel, do I go back to foster care? The question shattered Henry. No, son. Either way, you're not going back. I promise. Slowly, Sam set down his violin. With shaking hands, he lifted his shirt slightly, revealing the right side of his abdomen. There, exactly as described, was the horseshoe-shaped appendectomy scar. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Dr. Chen, maintaining professional distance, asked, "The shoulder blade. May I?" Sam turned, lifting his shirt higher. The crescent moon birthmark was unmistakable. "The palm," someone called out. Sam extended his right hand. In the center of his palm, a circular scar, faded but visible. Part C. Memory fragments. The evidence was overwhelming, but Sam Daniel stood rigid, uncomprehending. I don't remember any of it. I don't remember you. Henry approached slowly, as one might approach a wounded animal. The lullaby you played Moon River Variation. Do you remember learning it? Old Joe grandfather. Sam stumbled over the word. He would hum it when I couldn't sleep. He said it came from somewhere beautiful, before the world broke. I wrote it, Henry whispered, the night you were born. Your mother was sleeping, and you were in my arms, and I hummed it until it became real. Later, when you were 5, we turned it into a violin piece together. You added the butterfly part, do you remember? You said the bow should dance like butterfly wings. Sam's eyes grew distant. Butterfly part, he repeated slowly. Someone used to say, someone said butterflies were just flowers with wings. Was that your mother? Margaret. She said it every spring when the garden bloomed. The memories weren't returning, they were seeping, like water through cracks. Sam suddenly hummed a fragment of melody no one had mentioned yet. Eleanor gasped. That's Margaret's washing song. She made it up, sang it every Saturday morning. Sam looked confused. I don't know why I know that. Sometimes I know things without knowing why. Like, he looked at Henry with sudden intensity. Pine. You smell like pine, but it makes me feel safe and scared at the same time. I've worn the same cologne for 20 years, Henry said, his voice breaking. Pine and sandalwood. You used to steal the bottle and pretend it was magic potion. The crowd watched, transfixed, as fragments of a lost life emerged. Dr. Chen observed clinically, occasionally making notes. Trauma-based amnesia doesn't erase everything, it buries it. Sensory triggers smell, sound. Taste can awaken pieces. Sam moved toward the piano at the stage's edge, drawn by something he couldn't name. His twisted left hand touched middle C, and suddenly he was playing not violin transcription, but actual piano. A simple melody with his good hand. Chopsticks variation. Henry breathed. I taught you that when you were 4. You couldn't reach an octave, so we modified it. Someone taught me, Sam said wonderingly. Someone with big hands that covered mine. Someone who laughed when I got it wrong but made getting it wrong feel okay. The memories were fragmentary, disconnected, not a narrative but a feeling. Sam looked at Henry, seeing him truly for the first time, not the cruel billionaire who'd mocked him, but a broken father holding the ghost of his son. I dream about fire, Sam admitted quietly. Always fire, and someone calling my name, but not Sam. Another name. D-name. His forehead furrowed with effort. The tall man should have come, but he didn't come, and the old man carried me through the garden where mother's roses grew. I was passed out drunk, Henry confessed to the entire room, his shame complete. It was Margaret's birthday, would have been her birthday. I couldn't face it, so I drank until I couldn't face anything. My son needed me, and I wasn't there. My father saved him when I couldn't. The crowd had split into factions. Some wept for the reunion, others raged at the injustice. Still others debated the ethics of identity and memory. Arguments erupted. The grandfather had no right. He had every right. Henry was negligent. 7 years stolen. 7 years saved. The boy can't just become Daniel again. He never stopped being Daniel. Dr. Chen raised his voice over the chaos. This child has been Sam for 7 years. Those experiences are real, but he was Daniel first. Both identities are true. The question isn't who he is, but who he chooses to be. Sam Daniel stood between his past and present, a 10-year-old boy carrying the weight of 2 lives. He picked up his violin again, the broken instrument that had been his only constant, and began to play. Not the lullaby this time, but something new, a melody that had never existed before this moment, born from the collision of who he was and who he'd been. The music spoke what words couldn't: confusion, fear, longing, and underneath it all, a desperate need to belong somewhere, to someone, as someone. Henry listened, tears streaming freely now, as his son, for surely this was his son, played out his fractured heart. The crowd fell silent again. Even the arguers stopped, because the sound coming from that broken violin and broken boy was the most purely human thing any of them had heard. When the last note faded, Sam spoke. "I don't know how to be Daniel, but I don't know how to be Sam anymore either. Old Joe grandfather said something before he died. He said identity isn't about memory, it's about choice. He chose to save me. He chose to love me. He chose to teach me. Even when his mind was gone, he chose music because music was all he had left of love." Eleanor Richards stepped forward again, her elderly face wet with tears. "There's something else I never said. Joseph came to me once, 5 years ago. He was lucid that day. He asked me to watch over you both, Henry and the boy, from a distance. He said when the time was right, the music would heal what memory couldn't. I didn't understand then." She pulled out a phone, showing a video. "I recorded him without his knowing, thinking someday it might matter." On the screen, Joseph Whitman, looking clearer than he had in years, spoke directly to the camera he didn't know was there. "The boy is my redemption and my sin. I saved his life and stole it simultaneously. Henry is my son, whom I failed by demanding perfection instead of offering love. But the boy Daniel, Sam, whoever he becomes, he's the bridge between what was broken and what might be healed. When he plays with Henry's passion and Margaret's joy and my technique and his own courage. He is all of us, and yet entirely himself." The video ended. The ballroom held 500 people, but it might have been empty for all the sound it contained. The moment balanced on a knife's edge toward reunion or rejection, healing or deeper harm. Eleanor Richards stood at the center of the ballroom like a woman approaching the gallows. Her 71 years showed in every line of her face as she prepared to detonate the final truth that would either heal or destroy the Wallace family forever. "I helped Joseph take Daniel," she said, each word falling like a stone into still water. "I helped him disappear. I arranged the false death certificate. I am the reason you mourned a living son for 7 years." The ballroom exploded. 500 voices rose in unison: shock, outrage, disbelief. Henry lunged forward, but Malcolm Torres caught him, holding the billionaire back from the elderly woman who had served his family for 3 decades. "You knew." Henry's voice was primal. 7 years of grief transformed into rage. "You stood at his memorial service. You watched me try to kill myself with bourbon and guilt. You knew." Eleanor didn't flinch. "Yes, I knew, and I would do it again." The crowd gasped. Sam pressed himself against the piano, violin clutched to his chest, watching the adults tear each other apart with truth. "Let me tell you about that night," Eleanor continued, her voice steady despite the tears streaming down her weathered face. "December 24th, 2017, Margaret's birthday. You started drinking at noon, Henry. By 3, you were slurring. By 6, you'd thrown a glass at Daniel when he asked if you could help with the cake he was making for his mother's memory. That's not," Henry started, but Eleanor cut him off. "By 8, you were passed out in your study. Daniel was alone, as he'd been alone every night since Margaret died. A 12-year-old boy trying to light birthday candles for his dead mother because his father couldn't bear to remember she'd existed. The matches were in the music room. He wasn't supposed to use them. But what 12-year-old follows rules when they're hurting? Dr. Chen stepped forward, studying Henry's medical records on his tablet. "Mr. Wallace entered rehab January 2nd, 2018. Blood alcohol level from his intake exam suggests severe alcoholism. His liver showed damage consistent with years of heavy drinking." Eleanor continued relentlessly. "Joseph arrived at 11:35 p.m. He'd been standing outside for hours, working up courage to knock. 20 years of estrangement, pride on both sides, but he wanted to reconcile. He wanted to meet his grandson properly. The front door was unlocked. You never locked it when you were drinking. Said it was too much trouble to find keys." She pulled out an old flip phone, showing call logs from that night. "Joseph called me at 11:41, screaming about fire, about finding Daniel unconscious. He was 75 years old, carrying a 12-year-old boy through smoke. And you, Henry, you never woke up. The smoke alarms were blaring, the house was burning, and you were too drunk to save your son. The accusation hung in the air like smoke from that long-ago fire. Henry's knees buckled, his anger transforming into something worse recognition. Joseph got Daniel out through the garden, but when they reached his car, the boy's head was bleeding badly. Joseph panicked, drove to my apartment instead of the hospital. I was a nurse for 40 years before I worked for your family. I could handle trauma. But when Daniel woke up 6 hours later, he remembered nothing. Not his name, not Joseph, not you. The last thing he remembered was music, just music, floating in darkness. Sam made a small sound, his hand going to a spot behind his right ear where a thin scar hid beneath his hair. We had a choice, Eleanor said, facing the crowd now, making them all complicit in her confession. Take him to the hospital, where they'd return him to a father who chose alcohol over his son every night. Or kidnap him, someone shouted from the crowd. Or save him, Eleanor shot back. Have any of you seen a child die from neglect? Not dramatic abuse, just slow abandonment. I have. I watched Daniel dying long before that fire. Every day after Margaret's death, a little more light left his eyes. Henry was there but not present, alive but not living, a ghost haunting his own son. Patricia Morgan, the child advocacy lawyer, spoke up. Neglect is abuse. Legal precedent supports removing children from alcoholic parents. But not like this, and Richard Blackwood countered. Not through deception and kidnapping. The crowd split violently, some nodding agreement with Eleanor, others calling for her arrest. Sam watched it all, trembling, as the adults fought over his stolen years. I falsified the death certificate, Eleanor continued, her confession complete. I knew the coroner's assistant. He owed me a favor from years back when I didn't report his drug theft at the hospital. The body they found was never properly identified. DNA testing was backed up for months. And by then, everyone believed Daniel was dead. Joseph had already disappeared with him. Where did they go? Henry's voice was hollow, all rage spent. First, my cabin in the mountains. 3 months there while Daniel Sam healed. Joseph tried everything to restore his memories. Photo albums I'd stolen from your house, home videos on my phone, even bringing him past your office building. Nothing worked. The trauma was too complete. So Joseph made a choice. If the boy couldn't remember being Daniel, he'd become Sam. A new life, free from the pain that broke his memories. Eleanor pulled out a manila folder, thick with documents. I kept everything. Medical records from those first months. Photos of his recovery. Joseph's letters describing their life. He didn't mean to end up homeless. His money ran out faster than expected. Medical bills. Fake documentation. Bribes to keep authorities from looking too close. By year 2, they were living in his car. By year 3, under bridges. But look, she spread photos across the nearest table. Sam at ages 4, 5, 6 gap-toothed smiles despite shabby clothes. Joseph teaching him violin in parks, shelters, under overpasses. The boy looked happy. Genuinely, purely happy in a way Daniel hadn't been in his final years with Henry. He was loved, Eleanor said simply. Poorly housed, inadequately fed sometimes, but loved completely. Joseph's mind started slipping by year 4, the stress, the age, the guilt. But even when he couldn't remember his own name, he remembered to love Sam. He taught him music because music was love made audible. Every lesson was an act of devotion. Every song a prayer for forgiveness. Dr. Chen had been reviewing Joseph's medical files. The dementia was vascular, brought on by a series of small strokes. But interesting, the music centers of his brain remained largely intact. It's why he could still teach even when he couldn't remember why he was teaching. You had no right, Henry said, but the words lacked conviction. He was my son, my child, mine. You forfeited that right every night you chose bourbon over bedtime stories, Eleanor replied. Every school concert you missed because you were too drunk to drive. Every time Daniel ate dinner alone while you were passed out in your study, I was grieving. So was Daniel. He lost his mother too, but you made him lose his father as well, piece by piece, drink by drink. The truth of it was undeniable. The crowd knew it, Henry knew it, and most devastatingly, Sam knew it. The boy spoke for the first time in many minutes. Old Joe, grandfather, he used to cry sometimes, said he'd done something unforgivable but necessary. Said love sometimes means choosing the harder wrong over the easier right. His young voice carried across the silent ballroom. He told me once that fathers fail. All fathers fail somehow, but the good ones find ways to love through the failure. Henry looked at his son, this boy who was Daniel but wasn't, who was Sam but more than Sam, and saw Joseph in his features. Not just the physical resemblance, but the weight of impossible choices. "There's more," Eleanor said, pulling out a tablet. "Security footage from various cameras across Seattle. 7 years of Joseph and Sam's life, gathered from ATM cameras, store security, traffic monitors. Watch." The screen showed hundreds of clips stitched together. Joseph teaching Sam to tie his shoes in a homeless shelter, sharing a single sandwich in a park. Sam defending Joseph from teenage bullies, getting his hand broken in the process. Joseph carrying Sam through a snowstorm to a hospital. Sam playing violin on street corners, earning coins that he'd use to buy Joseph medicine. Two people with nothing giving each other everything. "This is what I stole from you," Eleanor said to Henry, "but also what I gave to Sam, a grandfather's complete devotion. Not perfect, not comfortable, but complete." The crowd erupted into bitter factions. It's still kidnapping. It was rescue. The child had rights. The father had responsibilities. 7 years of lies. 7 years of love. Judge Harrison Clark, attending the gala, raised his voice with legal authority. "This is unprecedented. Kidnapping with benevolent intent. Neglect versus abandonment. The biological father's rights against the child's welfare. There's no clear legal framework." "There's no clear moral framework either," added Reverend Williams from St. Catherine's. "Is it worse to steal a child from an unfit parent or return a child to a reformed one? Can 7 years of love be erased by DNA? Does biology trump experience?" Sam suddenly screamed, "Stop, all of you! Stop!" The ballroom fell silent. The 10-year-old boy stood on the piano bench, elevated above the arguing adults, his broken violin raised like a weapon or shield. "You're all fighting about who owns me, like I'm a thing, not a person, Mr. Wallace wants Daniel back. But Daniel is dead. He died in that fire even if his body didn't. You want me to be your son, but you don't know Sam. You don't know that I'm scared of dogs because one bit me when I was 8. You don't know that I love peanut butter and honey sandwiches because that's all grandfather could afford some weeks. You don't know that I named my violins This One Is Hope because it was broken but still makes music." He pointed the bow at Eleanor. "You saved me but stole me. You loved me through grandfather but lied to everyone." The bow swung to Henry. "You lost me twice, once to alcohol, once to fire. Now you want me back. But what if I don't fit? What if I can't be the Daniel you remember?" Tears streamed down Sam's face as he addressed the crowd. "You all want justice. But whose? The law's the heart's God's. I'm standing here, alive, because an old man chose love over law. I'm broken because a drunk man chose grief over guardianship. I'm lost because everyone wants me to be someone Daniel or Sam, but nobody asks who I want to be." The violin came to his chin, and he played a single, sustained note that seemed to contain all the pain in the world. "Grandfather Joseph is dead. He died believing he'd damned himself to save me. Mr. Wallace, Father, you've been dead inside for 7 years. Mrs. Richards killed her conscience to keep me alive. Everyone in this story is broken. Everyone is guilty. Everyone was just trying to love the only way they knew how." The note continued, filling the ballroom with its piercing clarity. "So here's my choice," Sam said, lowering the violin. "I can't be Daniel. He's gone. I can't stay Sam. He was built on lies. But maybe I can be both. Maybe I can be the bridge grandfather talked about between what was broken and what might be healed." He looked directly at Henry. You're not the father I remember because I don't remember a father, but you're the father I have. Grandfather Joseph saved my life and gave me music. You gave me life and lost me to grief. Mrs. Richards chose love over truth. Everyone failed. Everyone tried. That's what it means to be human, isn't it? The 10-year-old boy stood above 500 adults, teaching them about forgiveness. I want to know you, he said to Henry. Not as Daniel, not even as Sam, but as whoever I'm becoming. Can you love a son you don't recognize? Can you father a child who doesn't remember you? Can we build something new from all these broken pieces? The ballroom held its breath. This was the climax, not the revelation of truth, but the choice of what to do with it. The crowd watched as Henry Wallace, billionaire, broken father, recovering alcoholic, walked slowly to the piano where his son stood. I don't know, Henry said honestly. I don't know if I can be the father you need. I failed Daniel catastrophically, but I'm 7 years sober, 7 years of therapy, 7 years of learning to live with failure. Maybe that's prepared me to love you whoever you are, whoever you're becoming. He extended his hand to the boy. Hello, I'm Henry Wallace. I'm an alcoholic. I'm a failed father. I'm a man who lost everything and just discovered it was never truly gone, just transformed. Who are you? Sam looked at the extended hand, then at the violin in his own hands, then at the crowd watching this impossible moment. Finally, he took Henry's hand with his good one, his twisted left hand still clutching hope. I don't know yet, he said, but maybe we can find out together. The moment should have been beautiful. But Eleanor wasn't finished. She held up one final document, a DNA test result. I had it done without telling anyone. Hair from Sam's brush, hair from Henry's office, rushed processing. She looked at the crowd, then at Henry and Sam. Do you want to know, or does it matter anymore? The question hung in the air like Judgment Day. Science versus faith, proof versus trust, biology versus choice. The DNA test results fluttered in Eleanor's hand like a death certificate. Sam stared at the paper, his small body beginning to shake violently. The weight of 500 eyes, the crush of truth and lies, the impossibility of being two people at once, it all collapsed on his 10-year-old shoulders like the burning house 7 years ago. No, he whispered, backing away from Henry's extended hand. No, I can't breathe. I can't breathe. Before anyone could react, Sam bolted. His twisted left hand clutched the broken violin as he sprinted through the crowd, dodging grasping hands, crashing through the ballroom's emergency exit. The fire alarm shrieked as the door burst open, adding chaos to crisis. Sam, Henry roared, pushing through the crowd. Daniel, stop! But the boy was already gone, disappearing into Seattle's November night. The temperature had dropped to 38 degrees, and Sam wore only his threadbare suit from Goodwill, the one Joseph had bought him with his last $20 for tonight's performance. The crowd erupted into motion. Some followed Henry into the street. Others called 911, still others stood frozen, unsure whether they'd witnessed a reunion or a destruction. Malcolm Torres coordinated with security, his phone already connecting to Seattle PD. We have a 10-year-old boy, brown hair, approximately 4 feet tall, wearing a dark suit, carrying a violin, possible suicide risk. He's heading north on 4th Avenue. The word suicide sent another shockwave through the remaining crowd. This wasn't drama anymore. This was a child in crisis, broken by the very people trying to save him. Henry ran harder than his 58-year-old body should allow, his dress shoes slipping on wet pavement. Behind him, dozens followed, some from genuine concern, others drawn by the morbid spectacle of Seattle's richest man chasing what might or might not be his resurrected son. There, someone shouted, pointing to a small figure climbing the fire escape of the Paramount building. 6 stories of red brick and broken dreams. Sam climbed with desperate efficiency, his damaged hand somehow finding grip after grip. The violin case banged against his back with each movement, a metronome counting down to catastrophe. 4th floor, Fifth floor. Sixth. He reached the roof and disappeared over the edge. By the time Henry reached the base of the building, sirens were already approaching. Red and blue lights painted the November night in emergency colors. A crowd had gathered, phones raised, recording tragedy in real time. "Sir, you need to stay back." Officer Jennifer Martinez tried to block Henry, but he shoved past her with strength born of paternal terror. "That's my son. That's my—" He couldn't finish, couldn't claim what he'd never truly possessed. On the roof, Sam stood at the edge, 6 stories above concrete and consequence. The wind whipped his thin suit, making him look even smaller, even more fragile. He'd opened the violin case and held hope against his chest like armor against the world. "Sam!" Henry's voice cracked as he emerged onto the roof, hands raised in surrender. "Sam, please step back, please." "Don't come closer." Sam's voice was raw. "I'll jump, I swear I'll jump." Henry froze. Behind him, police officers set up positions, but he waved them back. Below, the crowd grew larger, a sea of upturned faces waiting for tragedy or miracle. "I don't belong anywhere," Sam screamed into the night. "I'm not Daniel, he's dead. I'm not Sam, he was a lie. I'm nothing, I'm no one." "That's not true," Henry said, inching forward despite the warning. "You're the boy Joseph loved enough to damn himself for. You're the child Eleanor loved enough to sacrifice her integrity for. I'm the boy you were too drunk to save." The accusation hit like physical force. "I remember now not everything, but pieces. You were supposed to come. Fathers are supposed to come when there's fire, when there's danger, but you didn't come. You never came." Dr. Patricia Nguyen, Seattle PD's crisis negotiator, arrived on the roof, but Henry held up a hand, stopping her. This was his confession to make, his failure to own. "You're right," Henry said, his voice carrying to the crowd below, picked up by phone microphones and live streams. "I didn't come. I was passed out drunk in my study while my son faced death alone. I failed in the most fundamental way a parent can fail." Sam had started to cry, his small body shaking with sobs that threatened to topple him from the edge. "The smoke was everywhere. I couldn't breathe. Couldn't see. I kept calling for you. Daddy, Daddy, help. But you didn't come. Only the old man came. And even he was a stranger then." The crowd below had grown to hundreds. News vans arrived, their cameras capturing a billionaire's public destruction and a child's private agony. Someone had set up speakers, broadcasting the rooftop conversation to the street. "I hid under the piano," Sam continued, memories flooding back like smoke. "Mom's piano. She used to play it for me when I couldn't sleep. I thought if I stayed there, she would protect me, even dead. But pianos don't protect children from fire. Parents are supposed to do that." Henry fell to his knees on the tar roof, 20 feet from his son, from the edge, from the end of everything. "I know. God, I know. I failed you in every way. Your grandfather was right to take you. Eleanor was right to help. You're standing on that edge because of me, because I chose bourbon over bedtime, meetings over memories, grief over guardianship. But I loved you." Sam's scream echoed off buildings, reached into windows where families watched tragedy unfold. "Even when you were gone, even when you were drunk, I loved you. I made you birthday cards you never saw. I learned violin because you said music was how souls spoke. I tried so hard to be good enough that you'd stop drinking, stop disappearing. But I wasn't enough. I was never enough." "No." Henry crawled forward, gravel tearing his expensive suit. "You were everything. You were perfect. I was the broken one. I was the one who wasn't enough. Not enough to save your mother from cancer. Not enough to be a single parent. Not enough to face pain without drowning it in alcohol." Dr. Nguyen spoke softly into her radio. "We need the airbag. Now. He's deteriorating." Sam had started playing the violin, a wavering melody that fought against the wind. It was the lullaby Moon River variation, but played with such anguish that people on the street began to weep. The notes carried his pain better than words ever could. "Your grandfather saved you because I couldn't. Henry continued his confession, each word a nail in his own coffin. He was a better father in his dementia than I was in my sobriety. He gave you music while I gave you absence. He taught you love while I taught you abandonment. Then why? Sam lowered the violin slightly. Why do you want me now if I'm such a reminder of your failure? Why not let me stay dead? Henry stood slowly, hands still raised. Because I've spent 7 years learning to live with failure. 7 years of AA meetings where I introduced myself as a killer, the man who killed his son with neglect. 7 years of therapy learning that grief isn't an excuse for abandonment. 7 years becoming someone who might deserve a second chance. But I don't remember you. Sam's voice broke. I don't remember being Daniel. I remember being cold and hungry with Joseph. I remember playing violin for spare change. I remember Eleanor bringing us sandwiches when she could. But I don't remember you reading me stories or teaching me to ride a bike or any of the things fathers are supposed to do. Then let me do them now, Henry pleaded. Let me fail better this time. Let me be the father Joseph was when I couldn't be. Not because you're Daniel, you're right. He's gone. Not because you're Sam, that was survival, not identity. But because you're you, whoever that is. And you deserve a father who shows up. The crowd below had swelled to thousands. The live streams had gone viral. Hashtag #SaveSam trended worldwide. But on the roof, there was only a broken man and a broken boy, separated by 20 feet and 7 years of absence. Sam raised the violin again, but this time played something different. A melody no one had heard before, not Daniel's music or Sam's, but something new, born from this moment of absolute crisis. It was beautiful and terrible, like watching a heartbreak in real time. I remember the fire, he said between notes. Not just flames, but the feeling. Everything I knew turning to ash, identity burning away. And now it's happening again. Everything I thought I was is burning, and I don't know what will be left. A memory struck him with physical force. He gasped, nearly dropping the violin. You were singing after Mom died, late at night when you thought I was asleep. You'd sit outside my door and sing her favorite song, the one about flying. You couldn't carry a tune, but you tried. You'd sing and cry and drink and sing some more. Henry nodded, tears streaming freely. Leaving on a jet plane. She loved John Denver, said his voice sounded like home. You'd whisper, I'm sorry, between verses. Sorry to her for not saving her. Sorry to me for not being enough. Sam's voice had gotten quieter, more dangerous. But you never said it to my face, only to my door. Because I was a coward, Henry admitted to his son, to the crowd, to the world. I'm still a coward, but I'm here now, on this roof, in front of everyone, admitting my cowardice. That has to count for something. The wind picked up, making Sam sway. Gasps rose from below. The fire department had arrived with an inflatable rescue cushion, but it would take time to position, time they might not have. Joseph, grandfather, he talked about you sometimes, Sam said, his voice almost lost in the wind. When his mind was clear, he'd say, Henry was a good boy who became a lost man. He said losing Mom broke something in you that couldn't be fixed, only carried. He said he understood, because losing you broke something in him too. We're all broken, Henry said, risking another step forward. Your mother's death broke me. Losing you broke me worse. Joseph broke himself to save you. Eleanor broke her conscience to hide you. You're broken now, standing on that edge. But broken things can still work. That violin you're holding, it's broken, but it makes the most beautiful music I've ever heard. It's not the same, Sam screamed. Things can be broken and fixed. People just stay broken. No, a voice called from behind Henry. Doctor, Gwen had moved closer. People heal, differently than before, maybe scarred, but they heal. I've seen it hundreds of times. Trauma isn't permanent, even when memories are. But Sam wasn't listening anymore. The memories were flooding back faster now, triggered by stress and proximity to Henry. The fire alarm wouldn't stop. I covered my ears, but it wouldn't stop. Just like now, all the sirens, all the voices. It won't stop. He stepped closer to the edge, one foot on the lip of the roof, violin bow dragging across strings in a discordant shriek that matched his internal chaos. "Wait!" Henry roared with such force that Sam froze. "Before you jump, before you decide, answer one question. Just one." Sam turned slightly, enough to see his father but still balanced on the edge of ending. "What did Joseph call you when he taught you?" Henry asked. "Not Sam, not Daniel. What did he call you when he was happiest, when the music was perfect, when you'd mastered something difficult?" Sam's face crumpled. "Little maestro. He called me his little maestro." "That's who you are," Henry said, creeping closer. "Not Daniel, not Sam, but little maestro, the boy who makes broken violins sing, the child who loved a grandfather through madness, the son I failed but who succeeded anyway. You're not nobody, you're everybody who ever loved you, failed you, saved you, lost you. You're Joseph's redemption and my damnation and Eleanor's sacrifice. You're all of it, and that's not nothing. That's everything." Sam wavered, foot still on the edge, decision balanced on a knife's edge. Below, thousands held their breath. The world waited to see if love was stronger than loss, if hope could outweigh history. "I'm so tired," Sam whispered. "Tired of not knowing who I am." "Then rest," Henry said. "Now just 10 feet away. Not forever, just for now. Come with me, and we'll figure out who you are together. One day at a time, one memory at a time, one song at a time." Sam looked at the violin in his hands. Hope, broken but singing. He looked at Henry father. Stranger, failure trying to fail better. He looked at the crowd below, witnesses to tragedy or triumph, waiting to judge or mourn. Then he looked at the sky, where the first stars were fighting through Seattle's light pollution, and made his choice. Sam stood frozen on the edge, his foot still balanced between existence and extinction. When Mrs. Catherine Hayes emerged onto the roof, breathing heavily from her climb, the 70-year-old gala organizer clutched something in her weathered hands, the violin case Sam had dropped. "Wait," she called out, her voice cutting through wind and sirens. "There's something else, something in the case." She knelt on the rough tar, her formal gown pooling around her as she opened the battered case. Her fingers found a hidden compartment in the lining one Sam hadn't known existed. Inside lay a small digital recorder and another envelope, sealed with wax that bore the impression of a violin scroll. "Joseph gave this to me 3 days before he died," Catherine said, holding up the recorder. "He was lucid, completely lucid. He made me promise to put it in Sam's violin case, to only reveal it when the time was right. I think that time is now." Sam turned slightly from the edge, curiosity momentarily overriding despair. "Grandfather left something else." Catherine pressed play. Joseph Whitman's voice filled the rooftop, not the confused rambling of dementia, but clear, precise, weighted with the gravity of final confession. "My name is Joseph Samuel Whitman." The recording began. "I am 82 years old. I am dying, and I am finally, blessedly, cursedly lucid enough to tell the complete truth." Henry had frozen mid-step. Sam lowered his violin slightly. Even the crowd below seemed to quiet, though they couldn't hear the playback. "To my son Henry," Joseph's voice continued, "I want you to know that I've been watching you. Not consistently, my mind wouldn't allow that, but in moments of clarity, I've seen what you've become. 7 years sober. 7 years of therapy. 7 years of building homeless shelters and music programs for underprivileged children. You've turned your grief into grace, your failure into fuel for change. The man you are now is the father Daniel deserved then." Henry's legs gave out. He collapsed to his knees on the rooftop, hands pressed to his face. "I took your son," Joseph admitted. Not just from the fire, but from you. It was wrong. It was kidnapping. It was also the only decision I could make in that moment. You were unconscious. Henry, the house was collapsing. Daniel was dying under Margaret's piano. I pulled him free, but his head struck the doorframe. My fault, my weakness, my aging body failing at the crucial moment. Sam's hand went unconsciously to the scar behind his ear. When he woke without memories, I made a choice that damned me. I could have taken him to the hospital, could have returned him to you. But Henry, you need to understand I'd been watching you for months before the fire. Standing across from your office, seeing you stumble out drunk at 2 in the afternoon, watching Daniel wait for you at school pickups while you forgot he existed. I saw my grandson dying not from neglect, but from the absence of presence. Dr. Nguyen had moved closer, gesturing for the rescue team to be ready. Sam remained on the edge, but his attention was entirely on the recording. So I kept him. I became Old Joe, and he became Sam, and we lived in my car eating dollar menu meals and learning violin under bridges. It wasn't the life he deserved, but it was the love he needed. Every day, I chose him over everything else, over comfort, over law, over my own salvation. And he thrived. Henry. Despite the poverty, despite my declining mind, he thrived because he was chosen, daily, completely. The recording paused. Joseph could be heard coughing, struggling, then continuing with renewed determination. But here's what you don't know, what Eleanor doesn't know, what I've never told anyone. 3 years ago, I remembered everything, not gradually, but all at once, like lightning clearing fog. I was teaching Sam Daniel the Bach partita when suddenly I knew exactly who he was, who I was, what I'd done. The guilt nearly killed me on the spot. Sam gasped, nearly dropping the violin. He knew, and didn't tell me. I went to find you, Henry, to confess, to return him, to face justice. But I watched you from across the street as you left an AA meeting. You were 90 days sober, shaking like a leaf, but helping another man who was only 1 day clean. You drove him to a shelter, bought him dinner, sat with him until dawn to make sure he didn't relapse. And I realized something: you had become the father Daniel needed. But Daniel no longer existed. Only Sam remained. And Sam didn't need you yet. He needed to finish becoming himself first. Eleanor Richards had climbed to the roof as well, along with Malcolm Torres and several police officers. The rooftop had become a stage for revelation. But Sam still balanced on the edge, a child holding the weight of multiple identities. Now, about Sam's hand. Joseph's voice continued, and Sam looked at his twisted fingers. Everyone believes it was abuse or accident. The truth is heroism. We were sheltering under the Ballard Bridge when 3 teenagers attacked me, wanted the few dollars we'd saved for food. Sam was 8 years old, 60 pounds, soaking wet, but he fought them like a lion. Don't touch my grandfather, he screamed. They broke his hand in 3 places, but he didn't stop fighting until they ran. He saved me. Henry, your son saved me, and it cost him his hand. Henry was crawling forward again, tears streaming. You fought for him. You protected him when I couldn't protect you. We couldn't go to a real hospital, Joseph continued. Too many questions. Too much risk. So we went to a free clinic where they said it wrong. By the time I realized the damage, it was too late to fix properly. But Sam never complained. He learned to play violin with a broken hand because music mattered more than perfection. He turned disability into distinction. The recording crackled with another pause. When Joseph spoke again, his voice was fading. I'm dying now. The cancer is eating me from the inside, which seems fitting. I've been eaten by guilt for 7 years. But before I go, I need to say this, Sam, my little maestro. You are not Daniel, and that's okay. Daniel died in that fire, not physically, but spiritually. You were born from his ashes, like the phoenix Margaret used to tell stories about. You are not your father's failure or my sin. You are your own symphony, complex and beautiful and entirely unique. Sam had started crying, the violin shaking in his grip. Henry, my son, forgive me. Not for my sake I'm beyond redemption, but for yours, and for Sam's. He needs a father, and you've become the father he needs. Don't try to resurrect Daniel. Learn to love Sam. He plays violin like you play business with passion that transforms the impossible into inevitable. Eleanor, Joseph addressed her directly, making her gasp. Stop carrying guilt that isn't yours. You chose love over law, compassion over convention. You saved us both in ways you'll never understand. That night you brought us food. The night Sam was starving and I was too proud to beg you saved his life. The recording grew quieter, Joseph's strength failing. To everyone else who'll hear this, judge if you must. But understand that love makes criminals of us all. We steal time, kidnap hearts, murder innocence with our failures, but we also resurrect hope, birth joy, create beauty from broken pieces. Sam is all of our broken pieces, arranged into something magnificent. A long pause, labored breathing. Then Joseph's final words, music heals what memory cannot. Sam, when you play, you heal everyone who hears you. You healed me every day for 7 years. Now go heal your father. He's been bleeding since the night you disappeared. And Henry, let yourself be healed. You've bled enough for 3 lifetimes. One last thing. Joseph's voice was barely a whisper now. The DNA test Eleanor has. She thinks I don't know about it, but I do. I had my own done too. Months ago when my mind was clear. Sam is Daniel. Biologically, legally, genetically he's your son, Henry. But more importantly, he's himself. Don't try to make him be Daniel. Let him be Sam. Or better yet, let him be both. Neither. Everything in between. I love you both. I failed you both. I saved you both. That's the paradox of family. We are each other's wounds and medicine, poison and cure. Forgive each other. Forgive yourselves. Forgive me if you can, forget me if you can't, but don't let my sins define your future. This is Joseph Samuel Whitman, father to Henry, grandfather to Sam, who is Daniel, teacher to little Maestro, fool, kidnapper, savior, sinner, and man who loved him perfectly but completely. The music ends here for me, but it continues in you. Play on. The recording ended with a soft click that seemed to echo across the rooftop, across the night, across 7 years of separation and 17 years of pain. Sam stood trembling on the edge of the building, violin hanging from his damaged hand, tears streaming down his young face. He knew, all this time, he knew who I was, and he let me choose who to become. Henry had reached within 5 feet of his son now, close enough to see the boy's pulse fluttering in his throat, close enough to grab him if he jumped. He gave you what I couldn't, the freedom to exist without the weight of expectations. But I don't know how to be free, Sam cried out. I don't know how to be Sam without Joseph. I don't know how to be Daniel without memories. I don't know how to be your son when you're a stranger. Then we learn, Henry said simply. We learn like you learned violin with a broken hand imperfectly, painfully, but persistently. We learn each other one day at a time, one conversation at a time, one song at a time. Eleanor spoke up, her voice carrying the authority of decades. Joseph was right. You're all our broken pieces. Sam, you're Henry's loss and Joseph's guilt and my lie and Catherine's compassion. But you're also your own person, with your own choices. So choose, child. Choose who you want to be. Sam looked down at the crowd below, thousands of faces turned upward, waiting for tragedy or triumph. He looked at the violin in his hands. Hope, broken and beautiful. He looked at Henry, broken father trying to heal. He looked at the stars above, broken light from dead suns still illuminating the darkness. Then he looked at the recorder in Catherine's hands, his grandfather's final gift, truth, complete and complicated. Grandfather said music heals what memory cannot, Sam said, his voice carrying across the roof. But what if I don't want to heal? What if I want to stay broken, because the broken pieces are all I have left of everyone who loved me? Then we stay broken together, Henry replied, extending his hand one more time. Broken but breathing, shattered but singing. We'll be the most beautifully broken family in Seattle. We'll make music from our damage. Sam turned fully from the edge for the first time, facing the assembly on the roof. Henry, Eleanor, Catherine, Dr. Nguyen, Malcolm, the police, all witnesses to this moment of choice. If I come down, Sam said slowly, I'm not Daniel returning. I'm not Sam hiding. I'm something new. Someone still becoming. Can you love someone still becoming? I've been becoming for 58 years, Henry said. Still not done. We can become together. Sam took one step away from the edge, then another. The violin bow dragged across the roof, making a scraping sound like grief itself. On the third step, his legs gave out, the adrenaline finally failing. Henry lunged forward, catching him before he hit the tar, pulling him against his chest. For the first time in 7 years, father and son embraced. Not as Henry and Daniel, not entirely as Henry and Sam, but as two broken people choosing to heal together. The crowd below erupted in cheers and sobs. The live streams exploded with comments. The world witnessed something rare, not a happy ending, but a complex beginning. 3 months later, Carnegie Hall held its breath as a 10-year-old boy walked onto its legendary stage. The violin in his hands caught the light, strangely gold veins running through previously broken wood. The Japanese art of kintsugi applied to instrument rather than pottery. Hope had been shattered and rebuilt, its damage now part of its beauty. Good evening, the boy said into the microphone, his voice steady. My name is Daniel Samuel Wallace. I used to be just Sam. And before that, just Daniel. Now I'm both. Neither. And something new. In the third row, Henry Wallace sat with Eleanor Richards and Catherine Hayes. A small medallion gleamed in his pocket, 7 years of sobriety, received that morning at his AA meeting. His hands, once shaky from withdrawal, now steady with purpose, gripped the program that read, Children's Benefit Concert Music Heals. The courts decided not to prosecute anyone, Daniel continued, addressing the sold-out hall. They said extraordinary circumstances required extraordinary mercy. My grandfather Joseph kidnapped me to save me. My father's housekeeper Eleanor helped hide me to protect me. My father Henry lost me because grief broke him. Everyone was wrong. Everyone was right. That's what family means, being wrong and right at the same time, with love holding it all together. Behind Daniel, a portrait of Joseph Whitman stood on an easel, the photograph taken during his prime with the Seattle Symphony. His eyes seemed to watch his grandson, proud and sorrowful simultaneously. Tonight's performance is dedicated to two fathers who loved imperfectly but completely. To Henry Wallace, who lost me, found me, and is learning to love who I've become. And to Joseph Whitman, who stole me, saved me, and taught me that music heals what memory cannot. Daniel raised the violin, his twisted left hand finding its unique position. The adaptive technique he'd developed had caught the attention of Juilliard's scouts, beauty born from brokenness. He began with Moon River Variation, the lullaby that had started everything. But this version was different. It contained Henry's original melody, Daniel's childhood additions, Sam's street-learned improvisations, and something entirely new, hope threading through sorrow. The audience wept openly. Some had followed the story from that viral November night. Others were discovering it fresh. In the back, two men argued in harsh whispers about Joseph's actions, hero or kidnapper, but their debate was drowned by the music. As the final note faded, Daniel lowered his violin and spoke once more. Family isn't about perfect memories. It's about choosing to love despite broken pieces. We're all broken here, every one of us. But we're choosing to love anyway. Henry stood, tears streaming, and Daniel ran to him. Boy and father embracing as 2,000 people rose in ovation, not just for the music, but for forgiveness made manifest. They had found peace in their complicated truth. The Wallace story reminds us that family isn't defined by perfect memories or unbroken bonds. It's forged through choosing to love despite our failures. Joseph showed gratitude through sacrifice. saving a grandson even when it meant becoming a criminal. Eleanor demonstrated loyalty by protecting a child at the cost of her integrity. Henry learned that true gratitude means accepting love you don't deserve and offering forgiveness you can't afford. Every character failed magnificently. Henry abandoned his son to grief. Joseph stole 7 years of truth. Eleanor lived a lie that let a father mourn a living child. Yet their broken pieces, held together with love and gratitude, created something beautiful, a family that chose each other not despite their scars, but because of them. Daniel's journey teaches us that identity isn't about choosing between who we were and who we've become. Sometimes the greatest act of gratitude is accepting all versions of ourselves and others, the failed, the lost, the found, the becoming. Have you ever witnessed someone mock or humiliate a vulnerable child, the way Henry initially mocked Sam? How did it make you feel? And did anyone stand up for that child when adults failed them?